Hey everybody, Scout Crafter here again. Today we have a 2-for-1. My buddy Brian from Oklahoma asked me to do something on a MrHer Brand tool, and they're out of Fremont, Ohio. And we found a tool for that, but it was a simple tool, so we threw in another one, and the other one was a little bit of a dilemma for me, and I hope maybe you can help me out and figure out what I'm doing wrong or what's up with this wrench. So let's get to it and see what we got. Okay, today's two and unusual rare wrenches that I'm sure most of you haven't seen before. Is this nice MrHer Brand, and this is number 194, you could see here, made in USA. And the second one here is a Krama. It's a Swedish wrench, and it's S3 is the model number, and it's made in Sweden. And let's talk about these two wrenches. First, let's clean them up and demonstrate them. Now, you know, a lot of times I'll get people ask me, this is after the wire brush, you could see, take a look at that finish, okay? This is right off the wire brush, and you could see that's considered by some to be patina or whatever, but that's years of tarnish and wear. And this is what we do. This is right after the belt sander, and you could see the difference. So, if, you know, this is what the tool looked like when it came out of the factory. It looked just like this, and this is what it looked like after years of pitting. You could see the pitting in there, and you could see you know, we try and get rid of that with the belt sanding, and I didn't even polish yet or anything, but that's why I prefer the tools to look like they did when they came out of the factory. Now you know my favorite part. Remember what these wrenches look like before we started. Okay, and we are finished. We're calling this project done. You can see here we did a nice little polish job on here. It looks very nice and very smooth in the hands, but we'll talk about each one of these wrenches individually. We have the Krama here, and then we have the MrHer Brand 194. And let's start one at a time, and then we'll test them out. So let's start with the Krama first. Now, I picked this wrench up just because for the coolness factor, okay? Now, Krama was a manufacturer, you could see here. They were made in Sweden, and they did a lot of automotive wrenches, things like that. But this one was interesting because I just thought, as a wannabe machinist, I always liked tools that looked, and you could see this little half moon swivels here. And I said, wow, that's pretty interesting. But when I got the wrench and I started looking at it, it's very limited. And this is a S3 model. They have S4, S1. So I think it was a 4 or 5 piece set that these would come in. Very limited in range. You could see here 7/16 to 5/8. Now, 7/16, 5/8 would be 10/16. You know, you break down the fractions. So it's only a 3/16 variance. Let me show you what the nuts look like that this will handle. Now we have the two sizes that this it's supposed to go from 7/16 to 5/8. You see that? That's the range of this wrench. Now, this is a 7/16 nut, and you can see here, here's a 7/16. You can see here, that nut fits there, okay? That's 7/16. Over here, we have the 5/8, okay? That's a 5/8, you could see, fits that. So, it should fit this range between here and here, correct? Now, I'm no expert, believe me, by any means, but I'm trying to figure this out. Look at this. How is this supposed to work? That's a 7/16. It's totally oversized. Now, even the 5/8, we'll put the 5/8 in here. This wrench is just such a strange wrench. We'll put on the nut tester. I'll show you. I don't know. Maybe I'm using it wrong. Maybe I know there's a lot of guys out there a lot smarter than me, a lot of my viewers, so maybe we could figure this out together. I'm going to put on the nut tester and see what we can do. Okay, for our first test, you can see this nut here is larger than a 5/8. You see? It's larger than a 5/8, which I was testing it out, and it looks like this one. You see how that seats? It looks like, you know, it works, but it doesn't get a good purchase. I mean, look real close over here. You can see it doesn't get a good purchase around the nut. You see? It's gripping it, but I don't know. I could see why these wrenches aren't very popular because I cannot get this thing to work. If I'm having trouble getting this thing to work, then there's something wrong. Okay, now we switched over to a 5/8. This is a 5/8. Okay, this is within the limits of this wrench, right? Now we'll try it over here. Look at that. How is this supposed to lock up? Can you see this? And, you know, maybe if you swivel this down, or I can't even get this thing to work on here. You know, maybe it just grips maybe one corner. I don't know. I don't know. I am at a loss. I mean, it's a cool wrench. It's interesting to look at. I just don't understand. Maybe I'm missing something. So maybe you can help me out here, because this is definitely not working. It looks like it would work. It just doesn't lock up on any of the, whenever I put a bolt in here, it just doesn't seem right, you know. Look at that. It doesn't lock up. I'm not a fan. Not a fan. I could see why this Krama the wrench isn't very popular here in the States, but anyway, thought I'd share it with you. Let's get to the other one. So then I started thinking maybe this is for round stock. Maybe it's not meant for nuts. Maybe it's 7/16 to 5/8 inch round. So I took a piece of round stock just to see. Forget it. Don't work. I can't get any purchase on here. This thing, I don't know. Help me out. What is this for? What am I doing wrong with this? Okay. Okay, now we're getting to a wrench that I can understand. A little more simple for me, huh? Okay, first of all, you can see MrHer Brand, okay? 1881 in Fremont, Ohio. Three gentlemen, one by the name of Jacob MrHer Brand, Charles Thompson, and J.B. Van Doren. They came up with a company, and they were basically making castings, things like that. You remember the automotive industry was just starting to bloom, and they were starting to make springs, things like that. And and they also make carriage hardware for you know, horse and buggy carriage, things like that. Bicycle wrenches, things like that. As the automotive industry picked up, they jumped right in and they started making auto wrenches, things like that. But they were also making anything to stay in business, safety razors. They had a whole bunch of things. By 1909, they were in full business. They were doing a lot of nice production work. A lot of their castings they had down pat. Their steels they had down pat. They were very good with their finishes, their chromium plating, things like that. MrHer Brand died in 1922 when his son took over, and then they went mostly into automotive tools because of how big the automobile was back in the 20s. Now, this wrench here is their 194, and it was their oil drain plug wrench, which is, has 7 different, you could see, 1 on this side, 2, and then on this side you have 3 and 4. And then 5, 6, and 7. These were for your square, and you can see those are for square drain plugs, and the other ones here were for the regular hexagon. This fit, at the time, about 90% of all the oil drain plugs, and it's just a nice wrench, isn't it? Look at that, the way it's made. And again, these were issued, even in the military, these were issued, and they're, believe it or not, as rare as it is, and a lot of you haven't seen it, this is a very popular wrench, the 194. And it's just a cool wrench, huh? And let me show you how it works. Now, I don't have any square drain plugs, but I'd like to show you how the wrench would match up. You see how here the square stock matches up to, and it has that design that it could rotate by about 30 degrees, so you can get, you know, different holes on here. On the other side here, for a different size, you can see here how that matches up onto the square stock, and it was a great design. And this one here was obviously for larger ones. Now for the hex wrenches, again, you had 4 sizes. Here was the smallest size that you could use with this wrench, and you could see how nicely that works on a you know, a drain plug or whatever. And once you loosened it, you would do it by hand. The next size up, from this size, the next size up would be this size, and you could see how that would work, fitting right over the nut. And again, it's a 6-point socket or wrench, so it gives you a good grip onto the nut. So it's really a nicely designed wrench. So in closing, we have our 2 wrenches that, even though they're not rare, you don't see them too often. I could see why you don't see this one in use too often, because for the life of me, I can't figure it out. If it wasn't for this 7/16 or 5/8, I would swear it's metric or something, but it is an interesting wrench. But I'll tell you one thing, I wouldn't want to be stuck on an island somewhere with this being my only tool. As far as the MrHer Brand 194, that's a sweet tool, huh? That never disappoints. A nice little simple casting that would really come in handy around the farm or in the garage. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed the presentation. Thanks so much for tuning in, and have a nice day. Bye-bye.